The man who would later corner Claire Bennett at work was already standing outside the rain-streaked window, and the only person watching him more closely than she was sat alone at the restaurant's last table. Claire had 3 seconds to choose: warn the manager and risk being called dramatic again, or carry the untouched steak back into the dining room as though the face beyond the glass meant nothing. She tightened her fingers around the warm plate and chose the second. The kitchen door swung behind her. Crystal glasses caught the low amber light. Soft piano moved beneath the conversations of people who never looked long enough to remember their server's name. Claire crossed the room without hurrying. Outside, Ethan Cole lifted 2 fingers against the glass. Not a wave. A reminder. Claire's step shortened, barely enough to notice. Then a little girl at table 6 dropped a paper crown beneath her chair. Claire stopped, set the plate safely on a service stand, and knelt to retrieve it. She smoothed the bent gold point with her thumb before placing it back on the child's head. The girl smiled. Claire smiled back, but when she rose, her hand remained on the chair for 1 quiet second longer than necessary. At the final table, Vincent Moretti noticed. He had occupied the same shadowed seat every Thursday for 6 weeks, always facing the windows, always ordering black coffee before dinner, always leaving the cup half-finished. The staff called him Mr. Moretti and avoided asking questions. Claire treated him like anyone else. Clean silverware. Water without ice. No nervous laughter. Tonight, when she set down his plate, the thin chain at her collar slipped free. A worn brass medallion touched the white fabric of her uniform. Vincent's gaze moved to it. His hand stopped beside the coffee cup. Claire tucked the medallion away before their eyes met. Neither spoke. Behind her, the front door opened. Ethan entered with rain on his shoulders and confidence that did not belong to a customer. He chose the small table nearest the service station, close enough to watch Claire work and far enough to pretend he had come for dinner. She brought him a menu. He did not open it. "You changed your schedule," he said. Claire placed a glass of water before him. "Would you like a few minutes?" "You did not answer me." Her fingers paused against the glass, then released it. "I am here to take your order." Ethan smiled as though her restraint belonged to him. "Still getting off at 11?" Claire looked toward the manager. He was laughing with a regular near the bar, his back turned. Asking for help would mean explaining the flowers with no cards, the calls that ended when she answered, the dark sedan that had followed her twice that week. It would also mean watching someone decide whether her fear was inconvenient. She stepped away instead. Ethan's smile vanished. Pressure moved through the room with her, invisible but precise. At table 6, the little girl lifted her repaired crown. Claire gave her a small nod. At the last table, Vincent turned his cold coffee cup 1/4 clockwise. Ethan followed Claire with his eyes. Vincent followed Ethan. Claire reached the service station and found a folded receipt tucked beneath her order pad. On the back, written in Ethan's block letters, were 4 words: "I know where home is." Her breath caught. Only once. She could tear it up. She could finish the shift, leave through the kitchen, and spend another night pretending silence was control. Instead, Claire flattened the receipt against the counter, took her pen, and wrote the exact time beneath his message. Then she carried Vincent's fresh coffee across the room. She replaced his cold cup without a word and slid Ethan's receipt beneath the saucer, where only Vincent could see it. For the first time in 6 weeks, Claire did not walk away immediately. She held his gaze and made a choice she could never take back: she let someone else know she was afraid. Vincent did not touch the receipt until Claire stepped away. He lifted the saucer instead, read the 4 words beneath it, then placed the cup back exactly where it had been. No signal. No promise. Only a slight shift in his gaze toward Ethan's table. Claire returned to the service station and kept working. It was the first test between them, whether he would make her fear visible before she was. Ready. He did not. When she passed again, the receipt was gone. In its place, beneath the saucer, lay a clean sugar packet with one corner folded inward. Claire looked at it, then at Vincent. He gave no sign that the small arrangement meant anything. She left it untouched. At Ethan's table, the menu remained closed. "You always ignore people who worry about you?" he asked. Claire set down a basket of bread she had not been asked to bring. "Are you ordering dinner?" "I came to make sure you got home safely." "I did not ask you to." His hand tightened around the water glass. The movement was small, but Vincent saw it. Claire saw Vincent see it, and that frightened her almost as much as Ethan's attention. Being believed created a responsibility she had avoided for weeks. Now someone else knew, and she could no longer pretend the danger belonged only to her. The manager, Paul, approached with the strange smile he used whenever a customer might complain. "Everything all right here?" Ethan leaned back. "Perfect. Claire and I know each other." Claire answered before Paul could. "He is not a friend." The words cost her. Ethan's face hardened. Paul glanced toward the dining room, where wealthy guests were already looking over. "Claire, can I speak with you near the kitchen?" She followed him 3 steps away, still within Ethan's view. Paul lowered his voice. "He is paying. He has not threatened anyone. I need you to keep this professional." Claire's eyes moved toward table 6. The little girl was struggling to cut her food while her mother searched through a purse. Claire crossed the room, steadied the plate, and cut the chicken into smaller pieces. The child whispered, "Thank you." Claire smiled, but her hand shook once when she set down the knife. Vincent noticed that too. When Claire returned, Paul was waiting. "Take 5 minutes," he said. "Collect yourself." The kindness in the words carried an accusation she could not challenge without risking her shift. Claire removed her apron and walked toward the staff corridor. Ethan stood immediately. Vincent reached for his coffee cup. Nothing more. Yet Ethan stopped. His eyes moved to Vincent, then away. Claire noticed the pause. So did Vincent. For the first time, she understood that his silence was not absence. It was restraint. In the narrow hallway, she found the folded sugar packet in her apron pocket. She had not put it there. When she opened it, there was no message, only a phone number written inside and a single word beneath it, "Choice." Claire stared at the ink, then folded the packet again. Through the kitchen doors, she could hear Ethan asking Paul when her shift ended. Paul answered too quickly. 11. Claire closed her eyes for one breath. Then she returned to the dining room, walked past Ethan, and stopped beside Vincent's table. She placed the sugar packet next to his hand. "I do not want protection I did not choose," she said quietly. Vincent looked at the packet, then at her. The hard distance in his face shifted by a fraction. "Then choose the terms." Claire glanced toward Ethan, who was now watching them both. She could leave early and protect herself, or stay and make sure the younger waitress closing with her would not be alone with him outside. She tied her apron back around her waist. "I finish at 11, she said. "But he does not follow anyone home." Vincent's fingers closed over the sugar packet. It was not trust. Not yet. But it was an agreement, and Ethan had just realized Claire was no longer standing by herself. Claire spent the next hour proving that staying until 11 had not been bravado. She moved Ethan's water glass farther from the aisle before a busboy could catch it with his tray. She reassigned the younger waitress, Lily, to the front section without mentioning why, then took the tables nearest the staff corridor herself. When Paul asked why she had changed the floor plan, Claire pointed to a family waiting near the entrance. They have been overlooked twice. It was true. It was also not the whole reason. Vincent watched her solve each problem without making anyone feel corrected. She remembered which guest needed a gluten-free plate, noticed a loose wheel on a dessert cart, and caught the handle before it tipped toward an elderly couple. No applause followed. Claire simply locked the wheel, steadied the server's shaking hands, and said, "Take the other side." Only when she turned away did she press her wrist against her apron, hiding the red mark left by the cart. Vincent's attention rested there for a moment. Respect entered his gaze, but trust did not. A woman who noticed everything could also be hiding something. Claire approached his table with the check he had not requested. "You are leaving early," she said. It was not a question. His coat remained folded beside him, but his driver had appeared outside 3 minutes earlier. Vincent looked toward the window. "You watch the room." "It is my job." "Not like that." Claire set the check down. "Someone has to." The worn brass medallion slipped from her collar again. This time, Vincent's eyes did not leave it quickly enough. Claire covered it with 2 fingers. The smallest distance returned between them. "You know it," she said. Vincent lifted his coffee. "I know old things carry weight." It was an answer designed to close the subject. Claire accepted it, but her hand remained near the medallion as she walked away. Ethan had seen the exchange. His first deliberate move came 5 minutes later. He called Paul over, spoke softly, then placed several bills on the table. Paul's expression changed. Claire was summoned to the bar. "He says you shared private information about him with another guest," Paul said. Ethan sat close enough to hear. "He says you have been making him uncomfortable." Claire looked at Vincent. He did not rescue her from the accusation. The choice belonged to her, and his refusal to take it away felt almost like support. Almost. Claire could expose the receipt and keep her shift, but doing so would reveal that Vincent had it. She could protect their fragile agreement and let Ethan control the story. Neither choice was clean. "He asked when I leave," she said. "He knew I changed shifts. He wrote that he knows where I live." Paul's eyes flicked toward Ethan. "Do you still have the note?" Claire held Vincent's gaze across the room. He reached beneath his saucer, but she gave the smallest shake of her head. "Not yet." She would not turn him into her weapon merely because she was afraid. "No," she said. The lie cost her. Immediately. Paul removed her from Ethan's section and warned that another complaint could end her employment. Ethan smiled into his glass. Vincent did not. When Claire returned to his table, anger had tightened the silence between them. "You protected my involvement," he said. "I protected my choice. At the cost of your credibility." Claire placed his coat beside his hand. "Then do not make me regret it." For the first time, Vincent looked at her without the distance of a powerful man assessing a problem. He looked at her as someone whose restraint had just demanded restraint from him. Outside, rain blurred the parked cars. Claire glanced once toward Lily, then toward the rear corridor. "At 11, she leaves through the front," Claire said. "I will use the kitchen exit." Vincent understood before she finished. She was drawing Ethan away from the younger woman. "That is not a plan," he said. "It is the only choice he thinks I have." Ethan rose, left cash beneath his untouched menu, and walked out without looking back. Through the window, Claire watched him cross the street instead of heading toward his car. He had made his move. Claire untied her apron, handed Lily the front door keys, and chose to become the person Ethan would follow. Claire watched Ethan disappear across the street, then turned back to Vincent instead of following him. "I need 5 minutes," she said. "Not permission. A choice." Vincent rose without reaching for his coat. He followed her only as far as the service corridor, stopping where the dining room light narrowed into shadow. Claire opened the manager's office door and placed both hands on Paul's desk so he could see they were steady. He knows my schedule. He waits outside. He has called my apartment. Tonight he wrote that he knows where I live. Paul looked past her toward Vincent. Is this about the customer complaint? It is about Ethan. Do you have the note? Claire's eyes moved to Vincent. He reached into his coat, but she spoke first. Yes. Paul exhaled as if the truth had created paperwork instead of danger. Then bring it tomorrow. We will review the cameras. He will be outside tonight. I cannot ban someone because you feel uncomfortable. Claire's jaw tightened. She removed her name tag and set it on the desk. For 1 second, her fingers remained over the engraved letters. Then she took her hand away. I am not asking you to protect my comfort. Paul looked at the name tag, then at the full dining room. If you leave now, I cannot promise your shifts will still be here. Claire glanced through the narrow office window. Lily was helping the little girl into her coat. The repaired paper crown sat crooked on the child's head. Claire picked up her name tag and pinned it back onto her uniform. Then I will finish. The decision closed the only easy exit she had left. In the corridor, Vincent waited with the receipt folded between 2 fingers. He had heard enough. You should go, he said. Claire gave a small, humorless breath. That sounds different when you can leave without losing anything. The words landed harder than she intended. Vincent's gaze lowered to the old brass medallion at her collar. His thumb pressed once against the edge of his own ring, the first break in his control she had seen. Then he handed her the receipt. Keep the original. Why? Because people with power prefer evidence they cannot reinterpret. Claire studied him. And people like you? We prefer choices we can survive. He opened the staff door and showed her the alley through a pane of rain-streaked glass. A black car waited at the curb. 2 men stood beside it, still and watchful. Vincent could have ended the night by placing her inside. Instead, he offered something smaller and harder. You choose your exit. I will not choose it for you. But whichever door you take, I need to know before 11. Claire looked at the men, then at Vincent. His world was not safety. It was preparation, consequence, and the burden of seeing danger before anyone else believed it existed. What happens if I tell you? She asked. Then I become responsible for what follows. And if I do not? His eyes held hers. Then you remain responsible alone. The answer carried no comfort. That made it honest. Claire folded the receipt and slipped it behind her name tag, close enough to feel its edge against her chest. The front door belongs to Lily tonight, she said. I take the kitchen exit. Vincent's expression hardened. Ethan expects that. Good. You are offering yourself as the easier target. I am making sure he chooses me. For the first time, Vincent's composure cracked, not into anger, but fear held under discipline. His hand moved toward her arm, then stopped before touching her. Claire saw the restraint and understood the cost of what she was asking, not rescue, but participation. She stepped closer and placed the folded sugar packet with his number into his palm. You said I could choose the terms. Vincent closed his fingers around it. Name them. Lily leaves safely. Paul sees nothing that lets him dismiss this tomorrow. And you do not step in unless I say your name. Vincent looked toward the dark alley, then back at Claire. Accepting meant surrendering control. Refusing meant leaving her alone. At last, he nodded once. Then at 11, you lead. Claire returned to the dining room, carrying a responsibility she could no longer abandon. Behind her, Vincent remained in the corridor, no longer merely watching her, but bound to the choice she had made. At 10:58, Claire carried the final check to table 6 and waited until the little girl's mother had fastened her coat. The paper crown was still crooked. Claire adjusted it gently, then held the front door while Lily walked them into the rain. She did not look toward Ethan's table. It was empty. She did not look toward Vincent either. His chair was empty too. For one dangerous second, the absence felt like an answer. Claire locked the front door behind Lily and watched her reach the rideshare waiting beneath the awning. Only when the car pulled away did Claire turn toward the kitchen. Paul was counting receipts at the bar. "Use the front," he said without looking up. "The alley light is out again." Claire removed the folded note from behind her name tag and placed it beside his ledger. Paul glanced at the words, then at her. His face lost color, but fear made him smaller instead of braver. "Why did you not show me this earlier?" "I did." Claire let the silence hold the truth he had refused. Paul reached for the phone. "I will call someone." Through the glass, a dark figure moved across the street. Claire covered the receiver with her hand before he could lift it. If police arrived after Ethan disappeared, Paul would call the danger resolved. If Claire left through the front, Ethan might circle back toward Lily's route. Two things worth protecting. Only one choice that kept both within sight. "Lock the door after me," she said. Paul stared at her. "You cannot go out there. You told me he had not done anything." The words were quiet. They changed him more than anger could have. Claire took the original receipt and walked toward the staff corridor. At the kitchen exit, the broken alley light left the rain silver and the walls black. She opened the door 3 inches. A hand caught it from the other side. Ethan forced his shoulder into the gap before she could close it. Claire stepped back instead of fighting the weight of him. The door swung open. He entered smiling, wet hair pressed against his forehead. "You made me wait." Claire placed the steel prep table between them. "You chose to." Ethan's smile thinned. "You think that man is going to save you?" Claire's eyes moved once toward the dark observation window above the storage hall. Empty glass. "No," she said. "I think you are going to decide what kind of man you are when someone finally sees you clearly." Ethan circled the table. He left. Claire's fingers tightened around the receipt, then loosened. She had believed Vincent's restraint meant distance. She had mistaken his silence for the same abandonment she had learned to expect from everyone with the authority to help. Ethan saw the hesitation and stepped closer. "They always leave," he said. Claire backed toward the storage corridor, drawing him farther from the kitchen door. The choice cost her the last easy route out. Then a soft click sounded above them. The observation window brightened. Vincent stood behind the glass. Not alone. 2 silent men remained several steps behind him, but Vincent's attention was only on Claire. On the wall beside him, 6 camera feeds showed the dining room, the front entrance, the alley, the service station, and Ethan's empty table from nights Claire had believed no one was watching. Dates ran beneath the footage. 6 weeks of Thursdays. 6 weeks of black coffee left unfinished because Vincent had never been there for dinner. Ethan stopped moving. Claire did too. Vincent lifted one hand, not toward Ethan, but toward the old brass medallion resting against Claire's uniform. His control broke for half a breath. His fingers curled against the glass. Claire understood only one thing, but it changed everything. Vincent had not begun watching when she gave him the receipt. He had been watching long before she ever asked. Not because he thought she was weak. Because, for reasons he had not claimed the right to explain, leaving had never been an option for him. Ethan reached for Claire's wrist. She moved first, slipping beyond his grasp and stepping into the clear view of every camera. "Vincent," she said. It was the first time she had spoken his name. The storage door opened immediately. Vincent entered without looking at Ethan. He looked at Claire, waiting. She could give him control now. She could let his world swallow the choice she had fought to keep. Instead, Claire held out the receipt. "Do not make him disappear," she said. "Make him answer where everyone can see." Vincent looked at the note, then at the woman who had just placed law, dignity, and his obedience above her own fear. He took the receipt. "Your terms," he said. With those two words, the balance between them changed forever. Vincent Moretti, a man others obeyed without question, chose to be governed by Claire's conscience. Vincent's men did not move until Claire stepped away from Ethan. That restraint gave Ethan one last chance to choose differently. He did not. "You think cameras make you safe," he said, backing toward the kitchen door. "They make you visible," Claire answered. Vincent placed the receipt on the prep table between them. And visibility creates consequences. Ethan looked from Vincent to the camera above the storage hall, then changed tactics. His shoulders lowered. His voice softened. "Claire, tell them this is a misunderstanding." The plea was not for mercy. It was an attempt to return the burden to her. Claire could preserve the evidence by letting Vincent's men contain him, or preserve her own terms by keeping the confrontation public, lawful, and impossible to dismiss. Both mattered. She took Paul's phone from the counter and called emergency services herself. The moment she gave the restaurant address, Ethan reached into his coat. Vincent moved first, not toward Ethan, but in front of Claire. The object in Ethan's hand was only a second phone, already recording. "There," Ethan said. The famous Vincent Moretti threatening an innocent customer. Claire saw the calculation immediately. Ethan had not come only to frighten her. He had come prepared to make any intervention look like intimidation. If Vincent touched him, Ethan could turn protection into leverage. If Vincent withdrew, Claire would face him alone. Ethan had transformed Vincent's power into the most dangerous thing in the room. Claire stepped around Vincent before he could stop her. "Keep recording," she said. "Start with why you know my address." Ethan's smile faltered. Claire placed the original note beside his phone, then moved the steel table aside so the camera could see the full room. Every action narrowed her escape, but widened the truth. "Tell them why you followed Lily's car," she continued. Ethan's eyes sharpened. Vincent's gaze moved to Claire. She had never mentioned Lily's route because she had not known. She knew now from Ethan's reaction. It was not certainty. It was disciplined pressure, the same skill she used every night when a guest lied about an order or a frightened employee concealed a mistake. She watched what people protected first. Ethan protected the one detail that could expose intent. "I never followed anyone," he said too quickly. Claire turned the phone toward the camera monitor. "Then you will not mind if the police compare your location history with hers." Ethan ended the recording. That was the first victory. It cost Claire immediately. His fear became anger. "You made me look like this," he said. "You kept changing the rules." "No," Claire replied. "I stopped obeying yours." He lunged for the receipt. Vincent caught his wrist and held it against the table without striking him. The control in the movement was more frightening than force. Ethan twisted, failed, then looked at Claire. "This is who you trust." Claire saw the old medallion reflected in the black screen of Ethan's phone. Vincent saw it too. His grip tightened for half a second, then loosened because Claire had asked for restraint. That small surrender changed her more than his intervention. Power had always meant someone else deciding what she should endure. Vincent was showing her another form, power disciplined by responsibility. Sirens approached in the rain. Ethan heard them and made his strongest move. "Ask him why he was watching you before I ever walked through that door." The room changed. Claire looked at Vincent. He did not deny it. That silence opened a wound Ethan could use. Trust and truth now stood on opposite sides of the same choice. Claire could demand an answer and fracture the control keeping Ethan contained, or hold the line and accept that the man protecting her had withheld something enormous. She chose the harder value. "You will answer me," she told Vincent. But not for him. Vincent's hand released Ethan the moment officers entered the corridor. Ethan tried to speak first. Claire placed the receipt, the phone number, the call log on her screen, and the restaurant footage in plain view. One piece at a time. No drama. No missing steps. Ethan was led away, still insisting that Claire had misunderstood him. Paul stood in the doorway, unable to look at her. The immediate danger was contained. The cost remained. Claire removed her name tag and set it on the counter. "I cannot work for someone who needed proof more than he needed courage," she said. Paul opened his mouth, but no answer came. Claire had protected Lily, preserved the evidence, and kept Vincent from crossing the line. In doing so, she had lost her job and the last ordinary life she could return to. Outside, rain struck the alley in silver sheets. Vincent offered his coat. Claire did not take it. "Now," she said, touching the medallion at her throat. "Tell me why you were here before Ethan." Vincent looked at the empty restaurant, then at the woman who had just sacrificed safety rather than surrender her values. "Not here," he said. Claire held his gaze. "Then take me somewhere you cannot hide behind the cameras." Vincent opened the rear door himself. By stepping through it, Claire chose to enter his world, not as someone he had saved, but as the one person who had just made him answerable. Vincent's car had gone only 2 blocks when blue lights appeared behind them. He did not ask the driver to speed up. He lowered the privacy glass, placed both hands where they could be seen, and told Claire, "Whatever happens next, you speak for yourself." At the station, Ethan was already waiting with an attorney. He had used the second phone before the officers arrived, sending edited footage to a local reporter and filing a complaint that Vincent had arranged the confrontation. The cameras that had protected Claire now made Vincent look like a man who had watched her for weeks, placed people outside her workplace, and used fear to pull her into his control. Ethan's strongest move was simple: he turned their hard-earned trust into evidence against them. An officer asked Claire whether Vincent had instructed her to leave through the kitchen. She looked through the interview room glass. Vincent stood alone in the hall, coat folded over one arm, while 2 detectives separated his men from him. He could have called attorneys. He could have made the questions disappear. Instead, he had surrendered every advantage because she had demanded that Ethan answer publicly. Claire answered, "No. I chose the exit." The officer slid a printed photograph across the table. It showed Vincent watching her from the restaurant's last table weeks before she had spoken to him. "Did you know he had been monitoring you?" Claire touched the medallion beneath her collar. Through the glass, Vincent noticed the gesture. His control broke in the smallest way. He lowered his eyes, as though he had already accepted that the truth might cost him her trust. The officer continued. "Mr. Cole says Moretti used your situation to manufacture leverage." Claire could protect the case by distancing herself from Vincent. It would make her a cleaner witness. It would also confirm Ethan's version that she had never chosen anything. Or she could defend Vincent and risk tying her credibility to a man whose reasons remained hidden. Both truths deserved protection, her independence and the trust he had earned by obeying her limits. Claire removed the medallion and placed it on the table. "Ask him why he recognized this." The officer studied it. "Do you know why?" "No," her voice stayed level. "That is the part he owes me. But owing me an answer is not the same as owning my choices." Outside, Vincent raised his head. Ethan's attorney entered the hall and offered a deal. Ethan would withdraw his complaint if Claire declined to pursue charges and publicly stated that Vincent had frightened her into cooperating. The offer attacked exactly what they had built. If she refused, Vincent could face investigation, his surveillance footage might be challenged, and Claire's case could weaken. If she accepted, Ethan would walk away with the power to rewrite everything. Vincent asked to speak with her. The officer allowed 1 minute through the open doorway. He did not step inside. "Take the agreement," he said. Claire stared at him. "You know what it costs. It keeps your name out of my world. And puts his version over mine." Vincent's hand closed around the doorframe. "You wanted him to answer where everyone could see. I can still make that happen later. Not without becoming the man he says you are." Silence settled between them. Claire saw the sacrifice beneath his offer. He was willing to lose her trust, accept public suspicion, and let Ethan claim victory if it returned her to an ordinary life. Vincent saw what his protection had become, another powerful man deciding which truth she was allowed to survive. Claire stood and walked past the agreement without touching it. "You do not protect me by erasing me." The words stopped him. Under 15 words, they ended the person she had been, the woman who mistook endurance for independence. Claire returned to the table and signed a full statement naming Ethan, preserving the evidence, and confirming Vincent's restraint. The decision bound her future to testimony that could expose Vincent's world and destroy the last distance between them. Ethan's deal vanished. So did Claire's safest exit. As officers led Vincent toward a second interview room, he placed something in her open palm, a ring bearing the same worn crest as her medallion. He closed her fingers around it without explanation. Claire looked at the matching symbols, then at the man she had just chosen to trust before knowing the whole truth. Vincent stepped away because staying near her could now damage her case. The door closed between them, and for the first time, protecting each other required them to stand apart. Claire was still holding Vincent's ring when the detective returned with a clear evidence envelope. Inside lay the brass medallion she had removed during her statement. The two objects carried the same worn crest, but it was not the match that changed her. It was what the detective placed beside them, an old photograph recovered from Vincent's wallet during processing. Claire did not ask permission before turning it over. In the picture, her father stood outside a burning warehouse, one arm locked beneath the shoulders of a younger Vincent Moretti. Smoke had blackened both men's faces. Her father's medallion hung outside his shirt. Vincent's hand was pressed over a wound beneath his ribs, and his other hand gripped the same ring now resting in Claire's palm. No caption. No explanation. Only two men moving away from the flames together. Claire's thumb covered her father's face. Across the hall, Vincent sat behind another glass door while an attorney spoke beside him. He was not watching the attorney. He was watching Claire hold the photograph. The detective set a second item on the table, a folded restaurant receipt, yellowed with age. On the back, in her father's handwriting, were 6 words, "If she ever needs someone, stay." Claire read them once. Then again. The room seemed to rearrange itself around every choice Vincent had made. The cold coffee left unfinished. The last table with a view of every exit. The weeks of silence before she ever asked for help. His refusal to seize control. His hand stopping before touching her arm. His willingness to let her hate him if hatred returned her to safety. The medallion had never told him who she was. It had reminded him who he had promised to be. Claire rose. The detective moved to stop her, then saw where she was going and opened the door instead. Vincent stood when she entered. His attorney stepped back. Claire placed the photograph between them. Vincent did not reach for it. She set the old receipt beside it. His composure failed completely, though nothing dramatic changed. His shoulders lowered. His eyes closed for one breath. When they opened, he looked less like a man who commanded rooms and more like someone who had carried a debt until it became part of his spine. Claire held out the ring. Vincent looked at her open palm but did not take it. She closed his fingers around it herself. Then she removed the medallion from the evidence envelope and placed it beside the ring, joining the two symbols for the first time. "He did not ask you to watch me forever," she said. Vincent's hand tightened around the objects. Claire's voice softened, but not enough to spare him. "He asked you to stay when I needed someone." Vincent looked toward the glass, where detectives were reviewing Ethan's phone and the restaurant footage. "I did not know when that would be." Claire glanced at the old receipt. "So you kept showing up." He gave the smallest nod. No defense. No claim to gratitude. Claire understood then that his silence had not been control. It had been fear that explaining the promise would turn her life into a debt. She had spent years protecting herself from dependence. He had spent years protecting her from obligation. Both had mistaken distance for dignity. Claire reached for the photograph and folded it once, carefully, along an old crease. She returned it to Vincent's wallet. "The promise is finished," she said. Pain crossed his face before discipline concealed it. He believed she was releasing him. Instead, Claire placed the medallion back around her neck. What happens next cannot be for him. Vincent looked at her. For the first time, there was no promise, no debt, and no dead man standing between them. Only choice. In the hallway, an officer led Ethan past in handcuffs after. Investigators recovered his messages, location history, and unedited recording. Claire did not watch him go. His own decisions had finally become stronger evidence than his excuses. She kept her eyes on Vincent. "I will testify," she said. "And I will not let you trade yourself for my safety again." Vincent's gaze shifted toward the attorney, the investigation, and the life he had built around control. Then he dismissed the attorney with one quiet gesture and returned the old receipt to Claire. "Your father saved my life," he said. Claire folded the paper and placed it behind her name tag, though she no longer had a job to return to. "Then let me decide what mine becomes." Vincent opened the station door for her, but he did not lead. Claire stepped through first. The promise that had brought him into her life was over. The harder question remained, without debt binding them, would they still choose to stay? 3 months later, Claire stood beneath the same amber lights, holding a warm plate while rain moved in silver lines across the restaurant windows. This time, no one waited outside for her. Ethan's messages, location records, and unedited footage had held together under review because Claire had refused every easier version of the truth. He accepted responsibility rather than face the full case in court, and a protective order made the distance between them legal instead of imagined. The result did not restore what had been taken. Claire still checked reflections before crossing a parking lot. She still paused when an unknown number lit her phone. Safety had returned in documents and locked doors before it returned to her body. Paul had offered her the old position back after the investigation cleared her account. Claire declined. Instead, she returned only after the restaurant adopted written reporting procedures, working cameras in the alley, and a rule that no employee left alone after closing. Paul signed each change himself. On Claire's first night back, he carried a tray to table 6 when a new server became overwhelmed. He did not announce the gesture. He simply noticed. Lily now wore the shift manager pin Claire had once believed belonged only to people willing to look away. When a young busser dropped a glass near the bar, Lily helped him gather the pieces before asking what happened. Claire watched from across the room and gave her a small nod. The influence moved quietly, person to person, without needing Claire's name attached to it. At the last table, Vincent's chair remained empty. He had stayed away after the hearings ended. Not because the promise no longer mattered, but because Claire had asked him to let her life become her own before deciding what place he might have in it. He had honored that request with the same discipline he had once used to watch every exit. No drivers outside. No men in the alley. No black coffee cooling beneath his hand. Claire had received one envelope from him, delivered through an attorney. Inside was her father's old receipt and nothing else. No demand. No farewell. She kept it folded behind her new name tag, where Ethan's threat had once rested. Near closing, a little girl at table 6 dropped a paper crown beneath her chair. Claire set down her tray, knelt, and smoothed the bent gold point with her thumb. The child looked toward the empty chair at the last table. "Is someone sitting there?" she asked. Claire followed her gaze. "Not tonight." The answer carried an ache she no longer mistook for weakness. She placed the crown back on the child's head and returned to work. At 11, Lily locked the front entrance while Paul checked the alley light himself. Claire untied her apron, then stopped beside Vincent's table. On it sat a fresh cup of black coffee she had poured 10 minutes earlier. Not an invitation sent through obligation. A choice made without certainty. She removed the brass medallion from beneath her collar and laid it beside the saucer for one quiet moment. Her father's promise had brought Vincent there. Her own decision would determine whether he returned. Claire took out her phone and called the number hidden for months inside the folded sugar packet. Vincent answered on the first ring but said nothing. Claire looked at the empty chair. "Thursday," she said. 7 o'clock. No watchers. A pause followed, long enough for her to hear his restraint end. The question beneath it. "Just coffee?" he asked. Claire lifted the cup, felt its warmth against her palms, and looked through the rain-streaked window where Ethan's face had once made the room feel small. Beyond the glass, the street was open, ordinary, and hers. "Just a choice," she said. She ended the call before either of them could turn it into a promise. Then she carried the coffee to the service station, leaving the chair empty for one more week. Under the amber light, the brass medallion rested beside the untouched saucer, no longer a debt between two lives, but a bridge neither of them was required to cross. Outside, the rain softened. Inside, Claire turned off the last light herself.